Aronson! A short, chunky farm boy with a sunburned neck gangled forward, obviously awed by the Major's presence, and took his large plastic number one. He fixed it to his shirt by the pressure strip, and the Major clapped him on the back. Abraham! A tall boy with reddish hair and jeans and a t-shirt. His jacket was tied about his waist, schoolboy style, and flapped wildly around his knees. Olson sniggered. Baker! Arthur! That's me, Baker said, and got to his feet. He moved with deceptive leisure as he made Garrity nervous. Baker was going to be tough. Baker was going to be he's going to last a long time. Baker came back. He had pressed his number 3 onto the right breast of his shirt. Did he say anything to you? Garrity asked. He asked me if I was commencing to come off hot down home, Baker said shyly. Yeah, the Major talked to me. Not as hot as it's going to commence getting up here, Olson cracked. James, Baker, the Major said. It went on until 8:40 and it came out right. No one had ducked out. Back in the parking lot, engines started and a number of cars began pulling out. Boys from the backup list who would now go home and watch the long walk coverage on TV. It's on, Garrity thought. It's really on. When his turn came, the Major gave him number 47 and told him good luck. Up close he smelled very masculine and somehow overpowering. Garrity had almost insatiable urge to touch the man's leg and make sure he was real. Peter McBride was 61. Hank Olson was number 70. He was with the Major longer than the rest. The Major laughed at something Olson said and clapped him on the back. I told him to keep a lot of money on short call, Olson said when he came back, and he told me to give him hell. Said he liked to see someone who was raring to rip. Give him hell, boy, he said. Pretty good, McBride said, and then winked at Garrity. Garrity wondered what McBride had meant winking like that. Was he making fun of Olson? The skinny boy in the tree was named Stebbins. He got his number with his head down, not speaking to the Major at all, and then sat back at the base of his tree. Garrity was somehow fascinated with the boy. Number 100 was a red-headed fellow with a volcanic complexion. His name was Zuck. He got his number, and then they all sat and waited for what would come next. The 3 soldiers from the half-track pressed out wide belts with snap pockets. The pockets were filled with tubes of high-energy concentrate paste. More soldiers came around with canteens. They buckled on the belts and slung the canteens. Olson slung his belt low on his hips like a gunslinger, found a wafer chocolate bar, and began to eat it. Not bad, he said, grinning. He swigged from his canteen, washing down the chocolate, and Garrity wondered if Olson was just fronting, or if he knew something Garrity did not. The Major looked them over soberly. Garrity's rich watch said 8:56. How had it gotten so late? His stomach lurched painfully. All right, fellows, line up by tens. Please, no particular order. Stay with your friends if you like. Garrity got up. He felt numb and unreal. It was as if his body belonged to someone else. Well, here we go, McBride said at his elbow. Good luck, everyone. Good luck to you, Garrity said, surprised. McBride said, I need my fucking head examined. He looked suddenly pale and sweaty, not so awesomely fit as he had earlier. He was trying to smile, not making it. The scar stood out on his cheek like a wild punctuation mark. Stebbins got up and ambled to the rear of the tent. 10 wide, 10 deep queue. Olson, Baker, McBride, and Garrity were in the third row. Garrity's mouth was dry. He wondered if he should drink some water. He decided against it. He had never in his life been so aware of his feet. He wondered if he might freeze and get his ticket on the starting line. He wondered if Stebbins would fold early, Stebbins with his jelly sandwich and his purple pants. He wondered if he would fold up first. He wondered what it would feel like if... His wristwatch said 8:59. The Major was suddenly stainless steel pocket chronometer. He raised his finger slowly, and everything hung suspended with his hand. The 100 boys watched it carefully, and then the silence was awful and immense. The silence was everything. Garrity's watch said 9 o'clock, but the boy's hand did not fall. Do it. Why doesn't he do it? He felt like screaming out. Then he remembered his watch was a minute fast. You can set your watch by the Major, only he hadn't. He had forgotten. The Major's fingers dropped. Luck to all, he said. His face was expressionless, and the reflector sunglasses hid his eyes. They began to walk smoothly, with no jostling. Garrity walked with them. He hadn't frozen. Nobody froze. His feet passed beyond the stone marker, and Parade stepped with McBride on his left and Olson on his right. The sounds of the feet were very loud. This is it, this is it, this is it. A sudden insane urge to stop came to him, just to see if they really meant business. He rejected the thought indignantly and little fearfully. They came out of the shade and into the sun, the warm spring sun. It felt good. Garrity relaxed. He put his hands in his pocket and kept step with McBride. The group began to spread out, each person finding his own stride and speed. The half-track clanked along the soft shoulder, throwing thin dust. The tiny radar dishes turned busily, monitoring each walker's speed with a sophisticated on-board computer. Low speed cutoff was exactly 4 miles an hour. Warning, warning, 88. Garrity started and looked around. It was Stebbins. Stebbins was 88. Suddenly he was sure Stebbins was going to get his ticket right there, still sight of the starting post. Smart. It was Olson. What? Garrity asked. He had to make a conscious effort to move his tongue. The guy takes a warning while he's still fresh and gets an idea of where the limit is, and he can slough it easy enough. You walk an hour without getting a fresh warning, you lose one of the old ones. You know that. Sure, I know it, Garrity said. It was in the rule book. They gave you 3 warnings. The 4th time you fell below 4 miles an hour you were out of the walk. But if you had 3 warnings, you can manage to walk for 3 hours, you were back in the sun again. So now he knows, Olson said, and at 10:02 he's in the clear again. Garrity walked at one good clip. He was feeling fine. The starting post dropped from sight as they beasted a hill and began descending into a long pine-studded valley. Here and there they were rectangular fields with their earthly, just freshly tuned. Potatoes, they tell me, McBride said. Best in the world, Garrity answered automatically. You from Maine? Baker asked. Yeah, downstate. He looked up ahead. Several boys had drawn away from the main group, making perhaps 6 miles an hour. 2 of them were wearing identical leather jackets with what looked like eagles on the back. It was a temptation to speed up, but Garrity refused to hurry. Conserve energy whenever possible. Hint number 13. Does the road go anywhere near your home? McBride asked. About 7 miles to one side, I guess. My mother and girlfriend will come see me. He paused and asked carefully, if I'm still walking, of course. Hell, there won't be 25 gone when we get downstate, Olson said. A silence fell among them that Garrity knew it wasn't so, and he thought Olson did too. 2 other boys received warnings, and in spite of what Olson had said, Garrity's heart lurched each time. He checked back on Stebbins. He was still at the rear and eating another jelly sandwich. There was a 3rd sandwich jutting from the pocket of his ragged green sweater. Garrity wondered if his mother had made them, and if he thought of the cookies his own mother had given him, pressed on him, as if warding off evil spirits. Why don't they let people watch the start of the long walk? Garrity asked. Spoils the walker's concentration, a sharp voice said. Garrity tuned his head. It was a small, dark, intense-looking boy with the number 5 pressed to the collar of his jacket. Garrity couldn't remember his name. Concentration? He said. Yes, the boy moved up beside Garrity. The major has said it is very important to concentrate on calmness at the beginning of a long walk. He pressed his thumb reflectively against the end of his rather sharp nose. There was a bright red pimple there. I agree. Excitement, crowds, TV later. Right now all we need to do is focus. Said he started Garrity with his hooded brown dark eyes and said it again. Focus. All I'm focusing on is picking him up and laying him down, Olson said. 5 looked insulted. You have to pace yourself. You have to focus on yourself. You have to have a plan. I'm Garrity Berkovich, by the way. My home is Washington, D.C. I'm John Carter, Olson said. My home is Barsoom, Mars. Berkovich curled his lip in contempt and dropped back. There's one cuckoo in every clock, I guess, Olson said. But Garrity thought Berkovich was thinking pretty clearly, at least until one of the guards called out, Warning! Warning, number 5. About 5 minutes later. I've got a stone in my shoe, Berkovich said waspily. The soldier didn't reply. He dropped off the half track and stood on the shoulder of the road opposite of Berkovich. In his hand he held a stainless steel chronometer just like the major's. Berkovich stopped completely and took off his shoe. He shook out a tiny pebble out of it. Dark, intense, olive, shallow, shiny face with sweat. He paid no attention to where the soldier called out, Second warning, number 5. Instead, he smoothed the sock carefully over the arch of his foot. Uh-oh, Olson said. They all turned around and were walking backwards. Stebbins, still at the tag end, walked past Berkovich without even looking at him. Now Berkovich was all alone, slightly to the right of the white line, retying his shoe. Third warning, number 5. Final warning. There was something in Garrity's belly that felt like a sticky ball of mucus. He didn't want to look, but he couldn't look away. He wasn't conserving energy whenever possible by walking backward, but he couldn't help that either. He could almost feel Berkovich's seconds shriving away to nothing. Oh boy, Olson said. That dumb shit, he's going to get his ticket. But then Berkovich was up. He paused to brush some road dirt off the knees of his pants. Then he broke into a trot, caught up with the group, and settled back into his walking pace. He passed Stebbins, who still didn't look at him, and caught up with Olson. He grinned, brown eyes glittering. See? I just got myself a rest. It's all my plan. Maybe you think so, Olson said, his voice higher than usual. All I see is that you got 3 warnings. For your lousy minute and a half, you got to walk 3 fucking hours, and why in the hell did you need a rest? We just started, for Christ's sakes. Berkovich looks insulted. His eyes burned at Olson. We'll see who gets his ticket first, you or me, he said. It's all in my plan. Your plan and the stuff that comes out of my asshole bear a suspicious resemblance to each other, Olson said, and Baker chuckled. With a snort, Berkovich strode past them. Olson couldn't resist parting a shot. Just don't stumble, buddy. They don't warn you again. They just... Berkovich didn't even look back, and Olson gave up disgusted. At 9:13 by Garrity's watch, he had taken the trouble to set it back the 1 minute. The Major's Jeep breasted the hill and had just started down. He came past them on the shoulder opposite the pacing half-track and raised a battery-powered Lion howler to his lips. I'm pleased to announce that you have finished the first mile of your journey, boys. I'd also like to remind you that the longest distance a full complement of walkers have ever considered is 7 3/4 miles. I'm hoping you'll do better than that. The Jeep spurted ahead. Olson appeared to be considering this news with startled, even fearful wonder. Not even 8 miles, Garrity thought. It wasn't nearly as far as he would have thought. Hadn't expected anyone, not even Stebbins, to get a ticket before late afternoon at least. He thought of Barkovich, and all he had to do was fall below speed once in the next hour. Ray, it was Art Barker. He had taken off his coat and slung it over one arm. Any particular reason you came on the long walk? Garrity unclipped his canteen and had a quick swallow of water. It was cool and good. It left beads of moisture on his upper lip, and he licked them off. It was good. Good to the feeling like that. I don't really know, he said truthfully. Me either, Baker thought for a moment. Did you go out for track or anything in school? No, me either, but I guess it doesn't matter. Not now. No, not now, Garrity said. Conversation lulled. They passed through a small village with a country store and a gas station. 2 old men sat on a folding lawn chairs outside the gas station, watching with hooded and reptilian old man eyes. On the steps of the country store, a young woman held up her tiny son so he can see them, and a couple of older kids around 12, Garrity judged, watched them out of sight wistfully. Some of the boys began to speculate on how much ground they had covered. The word back at the second pacer half-track had been dispatched to cover the 6 boys in the vanguard. They were now completely out of sight. Someone said they were doing 7 miles an hour. Someone else said it was 10. Someone told them authoritatively that a guy up ahead was flagging and had been warned twice. Garrity wondered why they weren't catching up to him if that was true. Olson finished a wafer chocolate bar he had started back at the border and drank some water. Some of the others were also eating, but Garrity decided to wait until he was really hungry. He had heard that concentrates were quite good. The astronauts got them when they went into space. A little after 10 o'clock, they passed a site that said Limestone 10 Mile. Garrity thought about the only long walk his father had ever let him go to. They went to Freeport and watched him walk through. His mother had been with them. The walkers were tired and hollow-eyed and barely conscious of the cheering and waving signs and the constant hoorah of people cheered on their favorites of those of whom they have wagered. His father told him later that day that people lined the roads from Bangor on.